just throw there some of the positive things and the challenges that you are encountering. So we start with Deacon Dili.
Hello, everyone. So I was ordained as a permanent deacon 8 years ago, and ever since then, my primary ministry has been apostleship to the sea, now Stella Maris, caring for seafarers, in the port of Vancouver. Vancouver is Canada's largest port by far. It operates year-round, as opposed to most of the other ports around the country. I should mention, a year ago, less than a year ago, our Canadian bishops, after doing a study for the history of Stella Maris and current situation, and comparing how Stella Maris is run in other countries, decided that Stella Maris should be created as a national agency in Canada. We never really had a national identity per se in Canada. Our Stella Maris chaplains and associates were all appointed by individual bishops, and we did have a national director, but as I said, no particular entity. We had an identity, but no entity per se. So, and I'm incidentally the new national director. So I work with our bishop promoter, Bishop Thomas Dowd, who was an associate, an auxiliary bishop in the Port of Montreal until 2 years ago, when he was appointed the Bishop of Sault Ste. Marie, which is in Ontario, and he I believe, reappointed for another 3 years as our bishop promoter. So we are working towards getting Stella Maris Canada incorporated under the Canadian national regulations, and then following that to get charitable status with the Canada Revenue Agency, and that will allow us to do our own fundraising and accept funds and so on. Funding is a concern in Canada. We don't have any national fundraising, and so individual dioceses, some do have some kind of part of the second collection through the year, but for the most part we run on very, very small budgets. In Vancouver, Stella Maris works alongside the Mission to Seafarers and the Ministry to Seafarers, both of whom have full-time chaplains who you've met here. They've been here with me, Peter Smith and Gary Roosma. As is usually the case, working ecumenically is a huge opportunity, a very positive one, but it also has its challenges. And one particular challenge we have in Vancouver is just the recognition of Stella Maris as being port ministry, because everyone, including the labor personnel and people working at the port, they see port ministry as synonymous with Mission to Seafarers. And the Mission to Seafarers administers 2 centers that we have in Greater Vancouver, and as a result they get all the funding that comes, including from an annual the annual voluntary port levy that ships pay. Brings in about $170,000 a year, and it all goes to the Mission to Seafarers. We get other donations during COVID time, etc., including from the port itself, and it all went to the Mission to Seafarers because they are the ones who run the 2 centers. So there's a certain inequity there. It's difficult to change that, but it starts with raising the profile and understanding among everyone that we are in fact different entities. While we work together, we are different entities working together. I should say, I know it'll go around to Benjamin, but I was waiting till this forum to announce the great news about Benjamin being appointed now as our part-time chaplain in the Port of Montreal. Again, it's repeating this, but Benjamin was ordained a transitional deacon. He's a Franciscan friar last October, and will be ordained sometime the latter part of this year as a Franciscan priesthood. So we are really, really happy that he's there, because he's really taking the place of our previous national director, who was based in Montreal, Father Andrew Gavan. So I think that's enough for me for now, but very happy, of course, to be here with all of you.
If you can add something about this course, how do you find it, and everything, just as more evaluation of how it goes.
For this course itself, I had the opportunity to come here just 3.5 years ago after the ICMA convention in Kaohsiung, Taiwan. And I spent just 4 days in Manila and 4 days in Cebu area, hosted by Stella Maris in both these places. And I'll tell you that the dividends that experience paid in the last three years since going back, or 4 years, is tremendous. And you'll see it yourself. Now you can go back whenever you meet with a Filipino seafarer. You can ask them questions about the Philippines, and then throw in the fact that you were here yourself, and that really gets them to open up. You know, you ask them often, in my experience before, you ask them, where are you from? And they'll say, oh, Philippines. And I say, yeah, I know you guys are all from the Philippines on the ship, but where about? And they would kind of be, well, you know, he wants to know exactly, and they mentioned the place, and if I knew the place, I'd tell them, oh, I was there, or I was near there, and then they suddenly light up, and they say, oh, you were there, etc. So you will all, if this was your first time to the Philippines, that's something really positive to look forward to. And otherwise, culturally, again, in Vancouver, we have a huge Filipino population, Filipino-Canadian population. Some of our parishes in the Archdiocese have close to about 50% active participation, 50% Filipino, and very strong other Asian populations from India, from Vietnam. The church is growing most strongly among the Korean community. We have an RCIA program annually in our Archdiocese, and the Koreans being baptized and confirmed outnumber the rest, the non-Koreans in the whole Archdiocese every year. So it's a great thing that we have in Vancouver. So what else was there? Yeah, that's. So yeah, I was going to say, so we do have a huge cultural experience among Filipinos in Vancouver anyway, but this last week certainly reinforced a lot of things and clarified things like that AMASO membership and so on. Yeah.
So I'm Gregory from Stella Maris, UK, in the south of England. I work with Charles there. So we put together 4 or 5 ports at least. And Nick over here is our senior area port chaplain, so he oversees a whole team in the south of England and Wales. So I've been in Stella Maris now almost 3 years. I came in just as first lockdown was starting. So I began didn't know what I was doing to begin with because I couldn't get on ships, but anyway, slowly worked things out. My background is secondary high school teacher. I was a teacher of religious education, Catholic education, got a big network of Catholic schools in the UK. So enjoyed that, working with teenagers, but then thought it's time to do something else. And sort of pastoral role came up, which I was thrilled to apply for. So my main focus is ship visiting. That's That's what we do, and they're mainly Filipinos that we visit. So when this opportunity to be here came up, I grabbed it pretty quickly because I want to understand a bit more Filipino culture, what motivates them, what inspires them, what their hardships are and their background. So coming here this week has been great for that, a real eye-opener. We have many Filipinos who are permanent residents in the UK, and I've taught many Filipino children. We've always found them to be very nice children, very nice families. Sort of quite shy, I think, in the general context of the UK, shy amongst the English. I found them quite endearing people. But being here sees, I see them a little bit different now. I can perhaps be a bit more sensitive to their plight and their motivations for working at sea. So it's been a real eye-opener there. I'm particularly interested in trying to understand the political situation in the Philippines and how political, economic, and how that has driven so many, mainly men, to work abroad. I'm trying to understand. I can see it's been presented to us, hasn't it, this week, that it's a positive thing for the country. But I don't know about you, but I can't help feel, maybe I'm judging here wrongly, but I can't help feel it's a shame for the country as well that there's not more development taking place within. But it's so many working out here, they're sending money, but it slows up the development. So I'm interested to understand that. Okay. Is that enough? Any questions?
Julian from the chapter for Fiscal Cable Ports, which covers a few other ports, Harwich, Kingsbury, Little Whiskey Port, and Harwich, Bluestone, and Guyana. I've no background in maritime law, and how we first came across it about 8 years ago when I went to Mass in one local church. And there was a administrator who says, Stella Maris approached me overseas, offers mass, and I thought it was interesting. So I followed up the pop chapter at that time. I think Father Bruno probably knows, people probably know her. She's an lady, yeah, and she said she could talk to me about it. And she asked me how was I for life, because we just got these steps, and I was still high. By the time she finished talking to me, I was hooked on it and thought I had to go with it. And she had been an excellent role model for me. She was a people's seafarers nun for chaplain. She was and is still a role model for me. Follow her, the way she practiced, what she did, it can possibly improve. And I was a volunteer for about 5-6 years, so I had an apprenticeship. And then after that, she retired. Another contract into the law, giving my own things. And when the last contract, we decided to move on again, and I decided to approach Martin. And Martin realized I had more the experience and asked me to go for it. And I've also enjoyed being with Filipino seafarers. I don't want to be just a proximity to them while they are at port. I want them all accessible to them 24/7. That's why I always befriend them on social media so that they can always contact me before they arrive or whenever they need help or wherever they need help. So if I can get in touch with, if they need help when they're in another country, they'll be in touch with us when they get into the trip. So when COVID was started, vessels going to Temple Net as a only class over there. So that's what the Stella Maris stands for. We are around the world, not just just individual ports. So I think that's important. But I don't quite realize what it's good neither for them back in the country. When I heard about this course about how we actually learn about the culture, bringing the five-star hotel, they can see where they live. I've seen photographs there, on social media, on Facebook, messengers, and the first time I saw them queuing, I didn't also realize that they spent so much time having to go to the training again, get the certificates, and be called up. The first time I saw was something where workers queuing up, waiting to be called up. On the news, like in Mexico, all these people waiting for jobs, and in this time, I didn't really think kind of a big resource thing. And I didn't realize those people, even in the couple that it was heartbreaking to see them waiting there, away from the family, waiting to leave in a couple there, and not knowing when they get to be called up. It really touched me there. And so that was like that really. What else can I say? It has been a good experience. This course, that conference, and I think that it.
So I'm Jeff from the Archdiocese of Galveston, Houston, in Texas, USA. I am ordained since 1999 as a deacon and have worked full-time in different ministries in the church, directly for the church, for longer than I've been ordained. So somewhere close to 30 years. For years and years, I have longed to live near the water, and I had seen a position of port chaplain on the Archdiocese website, and I thought to myself, if that lady ever retires, I'm going to look into that. That lady retired, but after I had already made the move to Galveston and Houston. So I feel like all the different things that I've done in the past in the church and outside of the church really helped prepare me for what I was getting myself into by coming to the port. I am the only one from, the only port minister there in Galveston. Galveston says that it calls itself the port of everything, which I think is a bit boastful. I think what they really mean is they have all different types of vessels, from fishing vessels and oystermen to tankers and cruise ships. So most of the time, my office is in the Seafarers Center, which is just a block from the pier and the cruise terminals. And so the cruise terminals, the cruise ships come in all the time, bringing the same crew members in each week, and so we develop relationships with them. And a lot of them are Filipino. And so getting to come here and experience a little bit of what they experienced growing up here or living here helps me certainly to understand them. And I also was thinking that the environment here probably isn't a lot different than it would be in Taiwan, Indonesia, India, as far as the life of the seafarer, getting to come home but not really getting to go home, having to stay at a place like we saw this week in order to get all their paperwork ready and get ready to move back out. So just that whole process that they go through, I've come to understand it a little bit more.
My name's Mary Lynn, and I'm obviously Jeff's wife, and I volunteer at the Seafarers Center. One thing I take away from this experience is when they present, a lot of the crew members are Filipino, and when they present to the center, when I have interactions, it will give me a much fuller perspective of the person that's in front of me. And just them, but their faith, their history, and historical effects, as well as the
I'm Monica from Stella Maris, Hamburg, Germany. I'm the director, which sounds much grander than it is because it's actually 2 people working there. As you might have realized during these days, in Hamburg we are the small players. Northern Germany, where all the ports are, is historically Protestant. So just one of the 3 stations from Deutsche Seemannsmission in Hamburg alone employs 10 people, and we are 2 people and Father Salinas for a day. But I feel that these days for us are really blessed days. We have a wonderful team which is super helpful, and to have additionally Father Salinas, who is Filipino himself, one day with us and being basically ready all the time if Holy Mass is required on board a vessel and all of that. That's wonderful. Our main objective is doing ship welfare visits. We also have a small house that we can call our own, and we are a Siemens Club on demand. But just across the bridge there is this big Duckdime Siemens Club, and I have the freedom to ask the seafarer, what is it that you need? So if they need a bar, if they want to play pool, I bring them to the other club, because that's something I cannot offer. But additionally to the normal work we do, I say we are the door to the Catholic Church if somebody wants that. So that's our specialty. I think, like as Dilip said in Vancouver, it is wonderfully to work together. And I think now, because we are all independent, we work together so well. But in between, sometimes there are challenges when you realize, like, okay, the people from the government in Hamburg, they think like Deutsche Seemannsmission, that's it, you know. But in general, I think that works out very well, and I'm happy about the situation as it is right now, and I've realized that has much to do with the people working there. Like one of our main partners who coordinates the ship welfare visits for Deutsche Seemannsmission, he was before a chaplain in Tilbury. And in Tilbury, Stella Maris, Deutsche Seemannsmission, and I think Mission to Seafarers, something, they work together so super well. So when he came to Hamburg, he said, we have to work together even better than before, and that is really helpful. Yeah, so we are small but fine. And right now, even the money part is kind of calm. Who knows where that will go to, but at the moment, we are super lucky that we are partially funded by the state of Germany. Germany realized, like by signing the MLC, they promised to have social activities for seafarers. There are already people out there doing that, so they are giving money to the Siemens missions, you know, so that is really, really helpful. And again, Deutsche Seemannsmission, they have done so good political work. They managed to raise the money like 3 times from what we did in the beginning, and we are profiting for that because we all get much more money than before. And I would never have been able to do that because I'm so small. Oh, and in Germany there is one other Stella Maris station, and that's it. And we have a national director who does lots of other things. He works at the office at the Bishops' Conference, so he is nice but removed, you know, and like we tell him what we do and we invite him. So yeah, it's good to have connection to Bishops' Conference, but it's like, that's basically it, you know. One question was about the challenges. One challenge we have is about hospital visits because of data protection. Right now we have no clue where seafarers are in hospitals. Maybe there are no sick seafarers in Hamburg, but we all don't believe that. So we don't hear about that. We are ready to serve them, but we just don't know if there are seafarers hospitalized. And the other, well, not challenge, but I think something I would like to develop more is like pastoral care for people on cruise ships. The Deutsche Seemannsmission has a wonderful lounge, which is a coffee place for seafarers, where you can also do money transfer and buy SIM cards, stuff like that. But there is no time for pastoral care. So maybe we will give up a little bit of our time from Father Ritchie to take more care of the cruise ships. We have to see how that develops. Here I have learned really so many things. I had no idea, for example, that the families did not know what it means sometimes to be a seafarer and all of that, just to be immersed in the culture. And even though in Hamburg we work closely with the Filipino Catholic community, I still learned so much more about what it means to be a Filipino and additionally being a seafarer. So I think that sums it up.
Thanks, Monica. I'm Charles, and I'm the other half of the team. I work with Gregory, and together we look after the southern region, a stretch of the southern coast of the UK, and we also look after the islands to the south, the Isle of Wight and the Channel Islands. In my previous career, I worked in the Royal Navy, so this is a very nice progression for me. I worked for a while as a volunteer for Stella Maris in the good pre-lockdown days. In those times, we had no real base. Our office in Southampton was just the McDonald's, and the store was the back of the chaplain's car. And so it has been a pleasure to be able to work to develop that. So I began work as a lay chaplain about the first day of the first lockdown. So we were faced with a lot of challenges. A lot of the head office in London for Stella Maris closed down, started working from home. So we took over the job of providing all the resource support for all the chaplaincy around the UK. We were also faced with the task of supporting seafarers from a distance. We continued as far as we possibly could to visit ships, and so we developed a way of doing that. Even if we couldn't be in personal contact, we would still go to the gangway of ships whenever we could, and let them know that we were a presence. But we also had to develop new ways of keeping in touch, and we did this digitally. So we started from scratch. We had a little sort of pop-up studio, and we would produce weekly reflections, Sunday reflections, gospel readings, and prayers, which we would send out to all the cruise ships that we were in, the companies we were in contact with, and that was picked up and it gradually spread to other ships as well. So it was a really interesting challenge at that time. We now see the great benefit of moving beyond that. One of the challenges we face is in Southampton, which is a really busy port, and Fawley, which is not far, which is a chemical and fuel refinery. There is no shoreside place for them to visit. We have a place that we want to use, but we're desperately trying to get the funding in order to make that happen. So that another challenge we have is to try and be innovative to support the faith of seafarers, and we're continually looking at ways that we can really do something that's tangible for them. So we've been looking with, and especially with Gregory's knowledge of in religious education, we've been trying to get materials together that will help seafarers to sustain their faith and to sustain their faith as a community in a ship. So that's one of the things we look at. We also have to look after our volunteers, as it's a fairly widely spread area. We can't be everywhere, so we do depend on our volunteers. So we're trying to train them, recruit them, and sustain them. And this was very effective when we had a disaster in the Channel Islands with a collision at sea and sinking and fatalities. And it was wonderful that we had volunteers on the ground that we knew and we were therefore able to advise them, and they took charge of the whole, the support that we offered to the ship. And so it was great that volunteers were able to take that on. We also look after visitors to the UK, so if you are able to visit Stella Maris, there's a fair chance that you might be invited to come down to see us in Southampton, and we would really welcome that. We're only about an hour and a half from London, so that's another great pleasure for us. Another thing we're doing at the moment at Stella Maris UK is we are, in a couple of months, we will begin a sailing pilgrimage where we will sail a yacht in stages around the coast, and so we will have crews visiting places of pilgrimage, and this will develop awareness of Stella Maris, and will bring a lot of benefit. And I hope that we have an idea. We're going to try and tempt Father Bruno to join us. So we look forward when he's got lots of spare time on his hands, when he leaves Rome, that we'll be seeing him. So it's a really lovely ministry that we have. It keeps us going. Just a very quick reflection on the time we've had together. I mean, I found it very difficult to say there were highlights, because there were so many different facets that we were able to look at, and they all pull together to make an excellent view of what is happening in the Philippines. And so that when you pick up a particular problem, many of those facets will come to bear. You look at a seafarer who has been sick, landed from his ship, he's lost his contract, his whole income has come to pieces, his family in a remote part of the Philippines is left without funds, they've been hit by a typhoon. It's wonderful to know firsthand who the different players are here in the Philippines, and to have had the opportunity to meet Sister Vicky, who will sort it and pull lots of threads together to provide that support. It's having that sort of experience which makes a visit here really worthwhile. Okay, that's me.
Hi, I'm Pauline from Stella Maris Centre in Mackay, Queensland, Australia. I'm not a port chaplain or anything, I'm just a centre manager. I'm honoured that you'll let me sit in this and experience some of the things. Things I've learned on the Ahoy, basically to deal with the Philippines better. I had a lot of hospitalisations and I visit them in the hospital, but once I put them on the plane, I don't know what happens to them next. So it's good to get a bit of the knowledge of that and where the hospitals they're talking about, that they're going to a ship hospital, which is what we visited. So it's built in a lot of spaces. I can understand the devotion to working now that we see the background bit with the families and they're having to support the family, the community, the extended family. So I've learned a lot about that. My background is basically accounts. I basically also were doing the crewing for the tugs to bring big ships alongside. Then I moved to the shore side at the terminals, organising the big ships alongside, and now I've come onto the shore and organising the seafarers. So I've sort of come on land a bit, and now I'm enjoying it. I've been here 15 months. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Paul, the chaplain, the port of Incheon, South Korea. The Stella Maris in South Korea, there are two. Busan, the Incheon. Busan is bigger port there, and Incheon is geographically is very nearby the border of North and South Korea. So when you come to South Korea or transport to South Korea, you you must be there, international airport in Incheon. So I'm there, and also international port there, and cruise ship, and also there are many little islands there. So international fishers are there. So the problem is they live in a little container. This is something like some human trafficking issues raised. But problem is Korean people don't match about international level of human trafficking. So this is my challenge for me. I'm also working for migrants and refugees, and also child care center for those who have no visa in Korea. So many works, so including Stella Maris. So my regretfully I can't focus on Stella Maris full time. Just I'm doing so once a week. I'm visit port and looking after fishers around there. It's never enough, and so far we don't have any volunteers. I'm working by myself and my staff, and Father Alvin from Philippines, and we work together. So my plan is from January this year, I'd like to make some training course for new volunteers. So several people are willing to join us. So it's grateful. So I'll make some training course regarding the manual of the Stella Maris. I found the English version. The problem is in South Korea, the manual of Stella Maris 2007 from Vatican City, it yet translated in Korea. I found it, I translated, and then I report to the CBCK Bishops Conference South Korea. So problem is priests, bishops, they had no particular idea about Stella Maris so far. So this another challenge is this promote what I learned from regional conference or the ICMA this conference. I need to report the bishops conference in South Korea to build up something, because we don't have a bishop promoter or a national director. We have two chaplains, Incheon and Busan. So need to build up structure. And Bishops Conference South Korea, they asked me, it's really hard to change, even if something special, official mail or letter from Vatican City. But Bruno is resigned, and we've been looking for another international director, the Stella Maris. I'm waiting for the new appointment. So issues around many things to me, and also in Korea, in Incheon port, we don't have any partnership with other religions, like submission to seafarers or other Pentecostal or Protestant church. So it's my mission to searching and finding those who have another believers. They are looking after seafarers. I'm willing to make partnership with together and working together. I learned from this gathering. Thank you. Any question to me? No. Good.
And for another time, good morning to everyone. I'm Yuri from Italy. I'm based in Genoa Sport, where I'm volunteer since 8 years up to date. It's only 6 months that I have my position, a little bit more than a volunteer, but in parallel way I'm studying for university at naval architecture. I find Stella Maris thanks for my previously studies in naval institutes, where there is a program to discover our association that's operating in our port, and Stella Maris was one of these. It's it's a pleasure to me to be here. It's a great opportunity. It's the first time that I follow an IHOE course, and to be here in Philippines, it's great for me because so less or more 80% of seafarers that are visit our port is from Philippines. So it's for me it's a great opportunity to understand maybe a better way to engage with him and try to find a better way to help when he needs something, and learn from all of your experience, that for sure more than me, and that's it. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I am Father Vincent from Stella Maris, Ravenna. I'm ordained priest in 2016, and last year I started my experience in apostleship of the Sea Stella Maris. In Ravenna, I am director of Stella Maris and port chaplain. The port of Ravenna is a canal port with 25-kilometer docks, and the most important challenge in Ravenna is the transportation. Our center from the port, from our center to the port are 8 kilometers, and this is a very big challenge, I think. The second challenge, we don't have employee, and this is a very good problem, very important problem, because all activity in this center do I. And we try to speak with diocese. I try to speak with diocese for maybe receive how can I say yeah, for money, receive money for employer, and try to offer our best service for transportation. No? I have learned in this ICMA course more about Filipino culture, and also the background, educational background of Filipino seafarers. The lot of part of seafarers that visit our center are Filipinos, and I think this course is very well in this sense. Thank you very much.
Hi, good morning. My name is Nick. I'm a permanent deacon for the Portsmouth Diocese. I was ordained in 2019. Married, got 4 children, and had a career in kind of social work. Worked with people with learning difficulties, disabilities, rough sleepers, people with addictions, and sort of moved into the maritime charity almost by accident, and joined Stella Maris in 2020 in the lockdown, and that was my biggest challenge. Is that the team of South of England and Wales, there's 3 here, Charles, Gregory and Julian. It's a really good, strong team of chaplains with some newer people but really experienced ship visitors and chaplains. And during the lockdown I wasn't able to see people face to face, so I'm new in an organisation where face-to-face meetings and relationships is key, and I was not really able to do that. It was all via WhatsApp and Zoom and Teams and phone calls, so that was a big challenge. But slowly, you know, once things were eased, I was able to meet chaplains, still building relationships, especially when you're the new person. I'm the newest member of that team, and then, you know, in a position where you're leading, but trying to journey with the chaplains and walk alongside them as they do this great ministry. And because I'm in that position, I'm not responsible for one particular port. The chaplains look after their ports, and they have volunteers looking after smaller places. So I focus on one of my previous roles, which was working with fishers. So I try to visit a number of fishing ports close to where I live. I'm very passionate. I spent 5.5 years with the Fishermen's Mission, which is another member of ICMA. I spent 5.5 years working with fishers around the coast of England. So I'm very passionate about fishers and their families. I've dealt with a lot of migrant fishers, Filipinos, Ghanaians, Sri Lankans, and have been involved in quite a few issues of modern slavery and human trafficking as well. And this course, I wasn't actually meant to be on this course. It was 4 members of my team, so the 3 here and another chaplain, well, port welfare officer from Wales, that he pulled out. And so I was asked to come, and it's been a real eye-opener, so get the complete picture of Filipino culture and history, and even the practical issues of the journey from, for example, from the UK to the Philippines. So those guys are doing these sorts of journeys regularly, and you know, for me it's a horrendous journey, uncomfortable and long. So think that they have to do that routinely, but they do it gratefully because they know that they're going to be working and providing money. So to see that commitment and dedication, what they go through, to see the conditions here, that they know they're stopping their families maybe from a worse way of living and a worse state of being, has really opened my eyes, and I appreciate how much they do for their families.
Well, good morning, everybody, and want to extend a thank you to Dilip for his nice introduction of me, and it's very humbling to hear those words. But thank you very much, Dilip, and just to reiterate, just to review that I am a Franciscan friar and newly ordained transitional deacon since last October, and now I'm on the road to, God willing, ordination to the priesthood by the end of this year or next year sometime. And actually, the story of being involved in seafarer ministry, I kind of came into it by accident. I was working at Trois Rivières as formation of young friars, and there was a lady who attends our public masses each day, and she gave my name. She gave my name to the Stella Maris Trois Rivières director, Paul Rosette, Deacon Paul Rosette. That I was a former sailor myself in the Royal Canadian Navy for 10 years, and perhaps I might be a good candidate to volunteer. And myself, I did not know the existence of Stella Maris in Trois Rivières or Montreal or anywhere for that matter. Long story short, Paul Rosette called me and asked me if I'm interested to be a volunteer and a ship visitor and help with the center of welcome there. And so 2 years ago, I began giving some of my time, and it kind of evolved into, I got connected to Mariner's House in Montreal, and started perhaps giving some time there to volunteer at their center. And now, I got connection with Dilip, our new national director, and he fought for me, or kind of advocated for me to help become the Stella Maris Port Chaplain in Montreal, and it kind of gave me introductions and connections to the people who, in the Diocese of Montreal, to who are looking for to fill the slot of the formerly held by Father Andrew, who stepped back to concentrate on parish ministry. So, long story short, I just been named port chaplain in Montreal this week, and I'm very humbled by the experience that represented here, and so hope to follow in your footsteps and to bring to myself your years of experience and how you dealt with your challenges. So I'll be perhaps knocking at your doors by email or connections like these meetings, and to get myself a good footing and get a good start. So some of the challenges perhaps I've seen so far is what been mentioned already, but also challenges of human resource to help man our centers and help fill the gaps. Perhaps there are some holes, particularly within where I am in Quebec, big St. Lawrence River, the St. Lawrence Seaway, the three main ports, Quebec City, Trois-Rivières, and Montreal, in the Quebec region. But there are also little ports along the way, and they don't have access to seafarer centers or workers to help with anybody who needs a hand with welfare or just to have a welcome center. So I'll be working with the LEAP with that, help do what I can to help fill those gaps. And also, I think there's a challenge with self-promotion of Stella Maris in Canada, and particularly with our bishops, to be aware of bishops who have ports in their dioceses, to make them aware that there's a great need for seafarer ministry and not to neglect it. So I'm humbled and excited to what lies ahead in Stella Maris, Canada, and Port of Montreal. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all of you for this beautiful sharing. I should conclude, okay, I'm Father Bruno until January 27. This year I was the International Director of Stella Maris, and I ended my service there after 13 years. The question that I got during the past few months was always who will be your successor, who will take your place, and means even if it's already past 1 month, I don't have an answer to these questions. Actually, I give plenty of time to the superior of the dicastery if they wanted to plan and to plan the succession. They could have done it because my letter of resignation was dated July 2023, so there was more than 6 months. But the dicastery is going through very deep restructuring, and so I think at the moment they don't really know where Stella Maris will fit in the new structure of the dicastery. Because while before we had a lot of pastoral activity in the dicastery, there was the Ministry for Civil Aviation, for Rome, Sinti, there was the pastoral care of the sick, there was the pastoral care, there was the prison ministry, the pastoral care of the road and everything. At the moment, all these different ministry, there is no more. The people that they were in charge of it, they left, and no one has been appointed, and they are not considered anymore on the new structure of the dicastery. Stella Maris, I believe, is still there because we have a long history of being part of the Vatican structure. Actually, since 1942, when the office of the Stella Maris was still in Scotland, the Stella Maris was already part of the congregation of the bishop in the Vatican. So this year is our 81st year in which we have been part of the Vatican in different places. First we were part of the congregation of the bishop, and after we were part of the Pontifical Commission for Migrant and Itinerant People. The Pontifical Commission became the Pontifical Council. The Pontifical Council became the dicastery. So our presence is being supported by letters from the Secretary of State, from the Pontifical Council for the interpretation of the legislative text, but most of all, we have the motu proprio of John Paul II of January 1997. So we are still there. I don't know where they will put it. I don't know who will be in charge of the Stella Maris. For the time being, there is Sister Kathleen Redido, that is a Filipina sister that has been working with me for 1.5 years already, and I think she can do a good work there. She is at interim, but practically she cannot decide anything on the Stella Maris because everything has to pass through the cardinal and the superior, so the cardinal, the secretary, that is the sister, and the other secretary. So let us see what will happen. Of course, to have an international coordination through the Vatican, it will be very useful. But if they have other priority and the Vatican might not interested to do the international coordination, I think Stella Maris can continue to do his work, and eventually we can get organized and to do things with ICMA, with other organizations, and do the coordination by ourselves. But of course, to have the Vatican on our side, especially in some occasion like Seafarers Sunday or World Fisheries Day, when the dicastery will issue a message that generally is appreciated quite a lot by different international organizations, will be useful. But unfortunately, the priority within the Vatican, they shifted quite a lot. And, it's a lot to do with now with the Laudato Si, and so the care of the common house, and actually Stella Maris could be part of this very well, because we are working with the seas and everything. Unfortunately, the perspective that the Vatican has is a little bit different, because they concentrate more on the plastic in the sea, and so they say we have to take out the plastic of the sea, and that is the priority, and they don't consider the point if the fishers and the seafarers are exploited. So while I would start from the seafarers and the fishers, and we have to make sure that as their labor and human rights are respected, and after we can arrive at the sea, because the sea is the place where the seafarers they work, and the place where the seafarers they get their survival, and also they provide food for the whole world. So that's the things. We should start from seafarers and fishers to arrive to the clean sea, and not just start from the clean sea, the priority, and after. But this is the thing. So let us see what's going to happen. I know that a number of you that have been written to the cardinal asking what it will be, and I think they haven't answered you yet, but they might answer you. So this is the situation in which we find ourselves at the international level. So all the structure that we have also as a regional coordinator, we have the regional coordinator and everything. Again, that is still pending, floating in a sort of a limbo until a decision will be taken. Because now the new structure of the dicastery is divided in 3 sectors, while before we had all the pastoral sector and there were people in charge. For example, for Stella Maris, we have people in charge of prison ministry, in charge of Rome and Sinti and everything. Now the new dicastery, we have 3 sectors. The first one is dialogue, listening and dialogue. The second sector is research and reflection. And the third sector is communication and restitution. Now, don't ask me what is the meaning of some of this word, because even though I read, unfortunately, they send out the chart and the explanation of the chart only in Italian, not in other languages. It's difficult to me to understand what some of this word relate to Stella Maris. So I don't know if there are questions and everything. Regarding this course, as I've been mentioning, practically there was the first course that was done in 2016. It was done in September 2016, the first Ahoy course, when I was the chair of ICMA. And because at that time there was no Zoom, there was no Meet and everything, so everything was done in person in Manila, and the course lasted for 2 weeks, so it was quite intense and was the first time we did it, so we tried to put many things into it, and now was done a little bit differently, but I think somehow it reached the objectives that as ICMA we wanted to achieve. And I think there was a good mixture of different nationalities, and also a good mixture of different Christian denominations. So that was quite a good result to have it and everything. I think if we compare it with the other time, there were a few things that were done differently, but of course the times are changing and everything. The last time we had Cardinal Tagle, and that was an instant success with everybody, and I think the other denomination, they were more fun of Cardinal Tagle than what we were. But I think we have to be very grateful, and I think, Paolo, if you can pass our gratitude to the President of the Bishop Conference of the Philippines, because I believe from all the presentation that we had, the one that was done by the President of the Bishop of the Conference of the Philippines, I think was the top of everything. What I say, I think, was the first time that a bishop talked and he knew what he was talking about, because most probably he was the one who prepared his speech and not somebody else that prepared the speech, and he just read it was what was prepared. So that's the things. I'm glad that we were able to bring such a good number of people of Stella Maris to this training, because while other organizations they are more keen to sponsor their member to attend this kind of things. For Stella Maris is always a little bit more difficult, because as we were saying, other denomination, they have financial capability that is much bigger than ours, and they can invest money in these things, while for Stella Maris is a little bit difficult, but I'm glad that we were able to have all of you here, and for sure this will be an enrichment for Stella Maris globally. And also the fact that you had the opportunity to get to know each other in a deeper way, I hope will facilitate the coordination, the networking, and especially the fact that you have Father Paolo, and so anytime there is an emergency, there is anything related to Filipino seafarers and everything, you can contact directly to Father Paolo and his team, and for sure they will take care of it. And I think this is very, very important, because like if the seafarers will arrive in Manila and doesn't have a place to stay, he can stay in the dormitory. Father Paolo and his team, they can take care, but also to contact the families, it's extremely important. So that's the things. Paolo, could you please share a little bit the work that you do with the Maritime School? Because I think was mentioned by Father John, but I think maybe you can give a better explanation on the scale of the school that you are visiting, and the number of maritime school and maritime students that you met with. And I think this is a unique work that is done here in Manila.
Number one, we are happy as Stella Maris Manila that you came. Happy to see your faces. At the end of the day, if you will help a Filipino wherever he or she is, we will be happy. I am not staying in the hotel because I'm not staying. Did I wish? Yes, I did. But unfortunately, whatever. And so I drove every day, 2 hours to come, 2 hours to go. The program that we are doing in the schools began sometimes in the year 2000. If I may say, I did work for the Bishops' Conference of the Philippines for 12 years. And my wish was, when I finished the work there, my wish was I will become a bishop. But it didn't work. So I went to Australia, and then I came back with Stella Maris. I say this because when we were there, we had a similar program for the migrants. But the Savino began with the seafarers. When I came back, from 1 day full seminar, we reduced it to 2 hours. And only Stella Maris speakers. They had HIV/AIDS, lawyers, government, many people. It was 1 full day. And the schools were open the doors. When I came back with the team, we decided, no, Stella Maris must be known, at least from our perspective, that we do values enrichment seminar. So guys, we cover 4 topics. I happen to share the Filipino values. I'm not a Filipino, but I happen to share. Then we have an entire session in which we talk about Stella Maris, local, international. We do show the slide of ICMA. We do show the slide, fair enough. Then we talk about HIV/AIDS, health problems, hospital problems like you are raising. Of course, we talk about our Stella Maris network. We talk about smoking, drinking, the transmitted, what's that, DTS, infection transmitted diseases, a number of issues that we pack. It is in the package of Stella Maris. Then we have a lady who talks about rights and duties. What are the rights of the seafarers? For example, the contract, basics, huh? And then I go back again with the idea of what is the situation of nowadays maritime industry. Now, I will repeat it because I think it is important. There are, let's say, 93, 87 schools in the Philippines offering maritime courses. The top 15, we entered in 13. There are 2 there that we are not yet able to enter, and I will be very blunt, very honest. I do think it is because we happen to be Catholics. I'd like to hate to say this, but that is my gut feeling. So, just to tell you, so of these number of schools, we have about, this is government data, it's not Stella Maris, government data. There are 25,000 people who enroll in a maritime course every year. Of these, 5,000 reach the end of the course. And of these 5,000, if you have 2,500 who is going to become a fully pledged seafarer, then you are really lucky. So you just imagine the waste of resources. I'm gladly surprised that you are a former teacher, still teaching. This nation wastes billions. Now, in parentheses, boys and girls, when you begin the maritime course, until you end, you need more or less 20,000 US dollars. That is the cost. Now, it is not the poorest of the poor. The guys that we saw on the streets will never be able to become a seafarer unless they are the brightest and the best. So they go to MAP, which is for free. They go to any other school that it is for free. PNTC has nothing to do with our PNTC is a higher level of training, etc., as we have seen. So what we go, really, it amazes me, why does a maritime school that must follow the curriculum, because the EMSA issue is the Filipino seafarers, they follow the curriculum and they follow the time. So in theory, you follow the curriculum and follow the time. EMSA is asking, can you prove that they are duly trained? And that is the failure. Because to follow a curriculum with time, it is not enough. Is not enough to say they are duly trained. So that is an area. We go to the schools, we send a letter, we pay visit, like soon after we finish here, we go to the airport. Our flight is 3 o'clock in the morning, but that's part of being in the Philippines, whether we like it or not. Then 8 o'clock, we begin the seminar somewhere in Iloilo. I am happy to say that you have no idea, guys, how much the students are eager to listen. Please, I am a chaplain, a deacon like you guys, married or not. So you have gut feelings when you say something. People may say good or bad. We are the only institution that enters the schools with this program. There is no other, because they don't want. But when it comes to Stella Maris, please come in. If you ask Father, where do you find money? Before pandemic, we could survive with the centers. Before pandemic, we had 300 a day. Even if we charge $1 a day, it was good enough. Then the crisis came, maybe still there. Now what is next? No worries, God provides. The latest is, before Bruno left the Vatican, he found blah, blah, blah. So for the next year, we are okay. But I think it is nice to know that we enter and we share what we call values. We only give a seminar to the guys and madams who are about to graduate. we don't give this seminar to first, second, or third year students, because only those who decided, I will be a seafarer, even if we know that of that number, 50% of them will never enter the labor market. And that is another discussion. That is the political discussion. So I like doing this, honestly. Honestly, guys, I drive from Manila to a city here called Legazpi, just 483 kilometers. It takes me 12 hours. Or from here to Lawak, 486, another 10 hours. But when you give the seminar, when you finish the seminar, then you feel the trip was worth it. Never mind the expenses, never mind the heat, never mind whatever. We are always in a team of three. When the airfare is too much, then I go by myself. It is not nice to cover the 4 topics because it's boring, the same speaker, but what can we do? So on a yearly basis, we reach out to 10,000 maritime students. We reach out to 40 schools, 60. It depends on a number of things. A question that we have right now is this: will the schools open the doors after pandemic, keeping in mind the requirements of EMSA? If they do, keep the doors open to us, then that means that the values that we talk about is what they are after. If they will not open the doors, then Stella Maris has to be wise enough to find other ways and means.
Thank you, Paolo. If there are questions.
I'm sorry, yes, it's me again. How long are these courses? One day, you do all these topics for 2 days?
2 hours.
Oh, 2 hours only. Wow, that's intense.
We make use of PowerPoint. We try to make use of social media, but I'm not so sure because we are the old generation, so we are not really there, but we try to stay. It's 2 hours. Every slide, every PowerPoint is about 83 slides, and then you try to do a bit of everything, a lot of nothing. Sorry, Bruno, there are the teachers, by the way, the instructors also, they are there. A last comment, every single seminar we are assessed. At the end of the seminar, the school requires an assessment, and that goes from the English that we speak.
Okay, since we are not an English-speaking guys, for those who are English speakers here, I'd like to you to correct the way we speak, but anyway, for the Philippines it's okay, and so pasensya na lang kayo, especially the British and the Americans, that's the English we have learned. They assess us on the English, on the content, on the posture of the speakers, because the maritime schools, if they will, they are very, very, very tricky on getting things done. I wonder if we are assessed at that level, why they don't assess the course? So there are, I always ask, can I have a copy of the assessment? And then we get the feedbacks, and this is on a yearly basis. You may take me as a, come on, Father, you are a priest, you should be humble, but don't say this. But to be honest, with the fact that they allow us to go back, that means that the message was inculcated on the students. And these are the guys who will be on board in 2 to 3 years, because the Filipino educational system now functions like this. You go 3 years in the school, you go 1 year on board. It should be international, but they do it domestically. And domestically, the students pay the ship owner. It is not the ship owner that pays the boy or the girl to do the practical. They pay. Oh, I pay you to allow me to work. Then you imagine how it works. Then they go back to the school and they graduate. Those are what we call our target people. In our seminars, we require that the guidance counselor or the teacher be there. One of my dreams, I will stop, it is to be able to bring at least 100 guidance counselors of the maritime schools in a room like this. It was a simple question. How is guiding maritime students in your school? How does it work? because it is not as the same as others. For the very background that they are single kids, single parents, etc., etc. Well, we just have to find some money, but I think that would be a huge contribution of Stella Maris to the educational process in the Philippines.
I mentioned as to how involved I am with the Filipino community in Vancouver, and it includes incidentally conducting retreats for Filipino groups like Families for Christ, Couples for Christ, and so on. Also leading our spiritual leader in pilgrimages. You know, more than 50% of the pilgrims are always Filipino Canadians, and so on. And I've come to realize how little these Filipinos know about the life and work of seafarers, of Filipino seafarers. Even though they will say, oh yeah, I had an uncle or my brother-in-law or so on is a seafarer, they know so little about what what it took and what that actual life involved with the seafarer. And what I've come to realize is that a large proportion of the population right here knows very little about the real life of seafarers, what they actually go through to become, and what they go through in working as seafarers. So it's I was happy to hear when we were at the school they talked about getting into the earlier, educating the earlier students, and now they have a part of the curriculum in those 2 years. You know, they have 10 plus 2 before university, so in those 2 years, because of these 25,000 that enter every year, I think most of them have no idea about what they're going to come out with. Let alone the fact that only 5,000 graduates, that's 1 in 5, and then a minority of those graduating actually getting jobs. If this was a situation, I know certainly in Canada, for a profession like, say, if it was teachers or nursing or whatever, and you had a proliferation of schools that were taking in students like that with virtually no guarantee of jobs at the end, it would be considered really nothing short of fraudulent activity, if not, well, misleading at best, and certainly at worst fraudulent, taking $25,000 US for a program where really there was little chance of them actually getting employed with their graduate degrees and training. So, yeah, so it's that I think that educating about the reality of life as a seafarer is something that if you ask around the employees here at the hotel, you'll find that they know very little about what seafarers do, even though they have you know. So it's so that really struck me, and it helped me get a better understanding of why the Filipinos who we have in Canada know so little about the reality of seafarers. Well, I think a large proportion of the population here too knows very little of that reality. I could be wrong, but that's my sense.
Just a very brief comment. It is very, very interesting when you say, what do you do in the Philippines? I work for the seafarers. It is bad, it is sad, it is not nice when you see the face of the guy on the other side that I say, I am chaplain to the seafarers. It sounds like this. Ah, you are the chaplain for the rich. Consequently, they do not need pastoral care. But that doesn't mean that we don't do, please. I'm very happy to do what we are doing. Sorry, perhaps your question can be addressed to the wives that will be here in the next session. It will be nice to hear from them.
The interesting thing is that Father Paolo said that seafarers are considered rich, and this is also one thing that you can verify with the seafarer's wife, especially when there are fiestas, celebration in the parishes. The parish priest usually goes to the family of the seafarers and asks contribution, because of course they have better houses than others and everything, and they think that they make more money, and it's true, means some of the master, they make money and everything, but that's one of the things. So sometimes locally the church will remember the family of the seafarers only to go and to ask for contribution. But that can be verified with the seafarers family. Paolo, I think we have coffee break.
Yeah.
They should bring something.